afternoon, everyone. It's October 1st already, and we are here to do another Financial Wellness Daily broadcast. We're excited to be here. The program today is actually going to be a little discussion on Social Security, and with Nate Quilter, a certified financial planner who does a lot of work in this area. To get started, though, I want to make sure that everybody sees our disclosure there. The disclosure a little bit on COPEC, our speakers, our board, affiliated companies. And again, I am on the board, and as host, we want to go ahead and put some extra affiliated disclosure about our company on there as well. So you can see this here. You can also see it on the COPEC website at the bottom. You can click on disclosure and get a nice full disclosure there as well. So thank you very much for joining us, and participate as best you can. Today, we are talking, Nate, I see you joined us there. Thanks for popping up.
Yeah.
Today, we're talking about Social Security. So I know this is a big deal. We work with a lot of people with state pensions, federal pensions, but at the end of the day, Social Security is the big common among, most people. Even if somebody has a state pension, there's a lot of questions about that because they may have both, or how does Windfall and things like that happen. So, I'm real excited to dig into this, and sometimes we don't have enough time to do that. So we can really expound upon this as best as possible. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, yeah. As you mentioned, Social Security, it's very complex, but it is important. I found a statistic from Social Security Administration saying that among elderly benefits or Social Security beneficiaries, 21% of married couples and 45% of unmarried persons rely on 90% of their income coming from Social Security. So it's a major factor. Again, everybody's a little bit different. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, but overall, Social Security is a really big part of retirement for people in our country. So it's an important topic. We'll scratch the surface a little bit today, but you can spend a lot of time looking into this. As with anything, obviously, we know a lot about it, but it's always best to go to the source. So, if you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out, but also feel free to reach out directly to Social Security, because a lot of the questions I can talk generally on, but they can actually give exact numbers because they have you in their system. So
yeah, and it's a marrying of that. Obviously, any benefit you work with, whether it's Social Security or the state pensions or your company benefits, none of the information that either an independent advisor or education in general, it doesn't replace going and talking to the source. The problem is that source, that is, many times that's who we go to, but it's about marrying that together. What is the source telling you, and how do you apply it to your life? And one of the things we're seeing is a big trend over the last 5-10 years, a little bit longer, but heavily over the last 5 years, is a lot of companies are officially removing pension plans from their platform. A lot of them are going over to maybe just a 401k or a 403b, but not a pension. And this is putting a lot of pressure on the individual in understanding that a pension is not going to save you. You have to save, you have to invest wisely, you need to project what your assets can pay you over your retirement. And it puts a lot of pressure on Social Security as being the only, safety net. For my father, he had a pension and Social Security, and any investments above that was maybe 20% of the difference of his standard of living. Now, without those pensions, people 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, assuming Social Security is going to be there, of course, it might be 70% instead of 20% is on the individual.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very common thing. My father's the same way, Social Security and pension, but as you mentioned, a lot of places are getting away from that. And then a lot of the pensions we see are state pensions, and those, don't necessarily pay into Social Security when you're under that state pension. So, depending on what state you're in. So that can have, a big impact. As you mentioned, Social Security could be the only guaranteed income you have coming. So other than that, you're reliant on yourself. And citing that statistic I did from the Social Security Administration, I'd much rather have more of my income than 10% coming from outside of Social Security. The Social Security benefits, aren't that high of a standard of living. So it is very important for individuals to make sure that you've got yourself taken care of. And even if you are counting on Social Security, you mentioned the viability of the system. Is it still going to be around to pay out later on? If you're counting on that for everything and there are changes. So, when you look at your Social Security statement, it'll even say, they can look at it each year, but hey, the trust fund is projected to run out of money in the early 2030s, anywhere from 2032 to 2035, depending on when they look at it. That means that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to end. A lot of people are really afraid that Social Security at that point is just going to end, and that's not what they say. What they say is that really what's going to happen is there will have to be a reduction in benefits. There's not a trust fund that they can pull from, but there are still employees, workers in the workforce paying into Social Security, and they can then move those benefits on. But it's only projected to pay a little over 3/4, about 77% of what the recipients are receiving now, unless changes are made. So, knock on wood, hopefully politicians can get it together and make changes. That's one of the big things I'd like to see, is just for, peace of mind for people to know, hey, we may have to raise taxes a little bit. We may need to cut those benefits a little bit, but here's how it's going to work. It's just so people aren't worried, particularly young people, younger than me even, that they're not counting on Social Security. We do a lot of planning projections with what if Social Security pays half for people that are younger, just to make sure you'll be okay. And that's not going to be the biggest pillar, the only thing you're counting on for retirement. So it's, it's something that year by year we'll be keeping an eye on, and hopefully they'll get it back on track.
Yeah. It's interesting. I use this example every once in a while when, I believe it was George Bush. He was doing a presentation. I use this from time to time. And he talks about how, and this was while they were trying to get Medicare Part D passed. And they were using the example of a lot of the people who are on a fixed income. They don't have enough money, and they're cutting their pills in half or going without medication because they can't afford it or whatever it might be. And I remember he did something like in this presentation, maybe it was the State of the Union. He goes, here is Mary Jane so-and-so, and she is 90 years old, and everybody's like, oh, that's nice. And then he says something like, and she's on a fixed income, and they're like, and you can just feel the air taken out of the room, right? It's like, oh, that's sad, Well, what does he mean by on a fixed income? What he means is that people in retirement live off of needs, wants, wishes. I need a certain amount of money to pay my basic bills. I want to live a certain way, and boy, I wish I could buy a second home and try, all this stuff. He meant very clearly that she was on a fixed income, which for almost, like you said, the majority of people, that's Social Security. But it's not, Social Security is not designed to cover all of your needs. It's meant to be a safety net. It's meant to cover and support. And so he's using it as a purpose of passing, whatever it is, this other rule. But the point is that's way too common. And especially with pensions going away, and especially with people not doing their own savings, they miscalculate inflation, right? Social Security is going up, once every 3 years at 1% average or less. Pensions don't go up at all. And so it really has been misunderstood over time, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse compared to the amount of money they need. So I think there's a lot of need for people to not only understand what it is, how to utilize it, what are all these intricate rules that you can, suspend at different ages and all these things, but making sure they apply to a financial plan that it is not going to save your standard of living when you run out of assets for most people, especially the most critical ages, which is 85, 88, 93. You're fine at 73, but how are you at your most critical? And so it's real important for people to truly grasp this. With that being said, starting ages. When do people start this? How do they evaluate that?
So you can start anywhere from, you can start as early as age 62. You can delay as late as age 70. And then everybody has what's called a full retirement age, or a lot of times you'll hear it referred to as just an FRA, your full retirement age. And that is, when you look at the front of your Social Security statement, the number at the top you see, they give it a benefit amount. That's if you start your benefit at your full retirement age. Typically, originally that was 65. Again, Social Security wasn't designed to replace everyone's income forever. When it was started, most people weren't living past 65. It was a safety net. But so it started at age 65, but it's not 65 for most people these days. Depending on the year you were born is when it'll tell you when your Social Security age is. So as of right now, basically most people listening right now, it's probably somewhere between 66 and 67. So it's, each year basically goes up 2 months until 67 is your full retirement age for everybody after a certain point. So that's the age that they really say, a lot of the restrictions kind of fall off. What I mean by that is the full retirement age is the number you see on the front of your statement. If you start before that, every month you start before that, Social Security takes a little reduction off of that amount. The earliest you can start is 62 again. For each month you delay after your full retirement age, Social Security gives you a raise above and beyond what that statement says. So, but after age 70, there's no benefit to delaying. So, start at age 70 if you haven't by that point. Those are the different timeframes you can start, but then when you start can affect different factors. So again, going back to that full retirement age, if you start before that, there are earnings limitations you can have. So a lot of people, let's say, they say, hey, I'm going to retire at 62, or let's say my boss let me go at 62 and I need to start my Social Security benefits. Well, if you start your benefits and then you go earn money, if you earn over a certain amount, it's a little over $18,000 this year that you earn before your full retirement age, they start reducing that Social Security benefit. So they take away some of what you would have gotten. Now, it's not necessarily, it doesn't just disappear. You kind of get it back later when they recalculate it once you hit your full retirement age. But why start if they're going to reduce it at that point anyway, to an extent? Again, sometimes you just need that cash flow to keep you afloat. But but then again, hey, if you think you're going to live longer, maybe it's better to delay and get that raise and that guaranteed income of a higher amount for the rest of your life. If you don't think you're going to live very long, maybe that age 62 would be a benefit for you to start then. So unfortunately, there's no definitive right or wrong answer when you're trying to decide. So a lot of times, it's a lot of factors come into play with, where are you going to get the money from? The cash flow. How long do you think you're going to live? What's your investment rate of return going to be? What's inflation going to be? Is Social Security going to pay out what I see on that statement? So there are so many factors that go in. It's really hard to make a definitive answer. So it's really just weigh the pros and cons of each and see in your personal situation what you feel is best for you and or your family. There are a lot of strategies that used to be used, like file and suspend, where you could start a benefit off of your spouse but delay your own and have it keep going up. Well, if you were born after January 1st of 1954, that benefit's out. You can't even take it anymore. So Social Security is kind of making changes to make itself last better, not having make its funding better. So it's taking away strategies people can use. But maybe one spouse starts right away to get some income coming in, and the other spouse delays to age 70 to get that higher guaranteed amount. You can get benefits off of your spouse, potentially. There are different, we'll get to that here in a little bit, but then, when you have a state pension, that can affect that quite a bit.
You mentioned the evolution. I think a lot of people do themselves a disservice by not researching their options. And it can mean thousands of dollars over their life. A lot of money. And you mentioned the fact that something is excluded after a certain date. Well, you may talk to one person who's like, oh, I don't know anything about that, but you may be just within the, 1953 or whatever you need to I don't want to say talk to the Social Security. Don't just assume whatever they give you is the best thing for you. And don't just default to whatever's in front of you. Research it. Understand what options you have. Because like you said, if you're able to suspend and go off and do some of these strategies, it can dramatically increase, especially if you live a long time. If you're going to, if you happen to pass away at 72, probably not. But if you happen to live into your late 80s, into your 90s, and you don't set it up with some of these strategies up front, your benefit could be 20%, 30% less of what it could have been over time if you use some of these strategies. So, I implore people, please do your research and I don't want to use the word be lazy, but don't just assume what they're giving you is what it is. Find out and ask questions and get help or whatever it is, because it can make a big difference if it applies to you.
Absolutely. And a lot of people start, hey, 62 is when I can start, and they'll make their retirement decisions based on that sometimes. Hey, I can start Social Security, I'm going to go ahead and stop working. Well, just because you can start Social Security doesn't mean you're financially independent. You have the means to get you out that far, so maybe that 1 year of work, again, after basically every month you delay, you get a raise, is the way I look at it. So if you delay a year from 62 to 63, you're getting a little bit of a raise. And maybe that continuing working, you've put more into retirement accounts, you've avoided pulling from your retirement accounts. So it can have a big impact a lot of times. Again, every situation is a little bit different, but don't just see that, hey, because I can start Social Security at 62, that's going to be my retirement age. Make sure you take all, look at all the pieces of the kind of financial puzzle and put them together and see if that's what's best for you.
Right.
On the other hand, some people just say, look, the highest benefit's going to be if I wait till age 70. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for you. Weigh all those factors in. Maybe you have not that long of a life expectancy and children you want to leave assets to. Well, you can't pass along that Social Security, from that you would have had, but you can pass along accounts if you avoided pulling from them. But again, every situation is a little bit different. A lot of times it is better to delay to 70.
Hey, Nate, we got a question that came in. And it has to do with they're on a state pension, but they understand that there's an offset. It's called like she says a WEP. Can you go into that windfall elimination and define that more so she can understand how Social Security works with the state pensions?
Definitely, yeah, absolutely. So there are actually two ways they kind of ding you. The first way is the windfall, or they potentially can get you. The first way is that windfall elimination provision, and the second one is the government offset. So the windfall elimination, also known as the WEP, is a reduction based on your own benefit that you earned. So if you're in a state pension like an STRS in Ohio, like an STRS or an OPERS, you're not currently paying into Social Security through that employment that you're putting into the pension. Now, there are actually the majority of states actually they're paying into Social Security and their state pension, but Ohio, that's not the case. So because you're not paying into Social Security, well, when you look at your statement, Social Security, when they give that number, they're assuming that you were working full-time under Social Security. So then they say, they kind of claw some of it back and say, whoa, we're not giving you that full amount because you didn't actually pay into Social Security the full time. Your benefits were kind of maybe skewed a little bit by higher earning years, just a couple higher earning years instead of somebody who'd been working 30 years at a lower income. So what they'll do is they'll look at what are called years of substantial earnings. So to put that in context, this year's substantial earnings is about $26,000. It's indexed back by each year by inflation. So the equivalent of 26,000 today, 30 years ago, could be 7,000, whatever the number, 4,000, whatever that number may be. But you can actually look up a chart of substantial earnings by year, and each year of substantial earnings you get moves you along the kind of scale, I guess. If you have over 30 years of substantial earnings on Social Security that you were paying, into Social Security on that amount of income, that counts as 1 year of substantial earning. 30 years and they don't take any windfall elimination provision reduction out of your check at all from Social Security. Now, keep in mind when you hear these different offsets and the windfall elimination, this is from Social Security. Your own pension does not penalize you. They give you your pension amount that they were going to give you. It's Social Security taking away part of that benefit. So the maximum amount for the windfall elimination provision depends on which year you turned age 62. And each year, if you can look up on a chart, if I was 62 this year, this is how much it is. Let's say it's around $460 this year. So if your statement on Social Security says $1,000 and you have the maximum windfall elimination provision, which means you had less than 20 years of substantial earnings, that $1,000 gets cut down by $460, let's say, just for easy math. Well, now you're only getting a check for $540. So you want to make sure, don't just look at your statement and say, this is what I'm getting. Know how that Social Security is working with your pension, because you don't want to get a surprise, hey, you're getting $5,000 a year less than you were expecting. And between 20 years and 30 years of substantial earnings is kind of a sliding scale. So, it's either zero or the maximum. Well, it's just kind of broken down over those years. Each year there's a little bit less that they reduce it by. So again, that windfall elimination is fully based on your own earnings. I guess two more factors I'll mention about it. Number one is they'll never take away your full benefit. So if your Social Security statement says $500 a month in benefits, and you're subject to the maximum windfall elimination, they're not going to give you $50 a month. They're going to reduce that statement amount by about 55% at a maximum. And on the flip side, if your pension amount is very low, let's say you weren't working that many years under OPERS or STRS, they're never going to reduce Social Security by more than half of your pension amount on smaller pensions. So there are a couple kind of stopgaps they have there. But again, that windfall elimination is fully based on your own earnings. So when you look at your own Social Security statement. So a lot of people had part-time work before they started teaching, or afterward they work in a retirement job. But again, these have to be years of substantial earnings. The other kind of way they get you a little bit, or they can get you, is the government offset. And what that is that's when you are eligible for benefits off of your spouse. It's a way they reduce the amount you would have been eligible from your spouse. Kind of the quick way I like to think of that is, any amount you would have been eligible from your spouse, they look at 2/3 of your pension amount and they subtract that from the amount you would have gotten. So if you were going to get, let's say, $1,000 of spousal benefits based on your spouse, but your pension from STRS or OPERS is $3,000, they're going to wipe out $2,000 of spousal benefit, which would completely wipe it out. A lot of times we see that pretty often, where it just completely wipes out any spousal benefit, that government offset. So again, that could be part of your strategy too, when you're starting is, if you're a couple that they're going to get a spousal, maybe you want to delay, but if, hey, they're not going to get a spousal anyway, maybe if I start earlier, I can preserve the accounts in case something happens to me earlier. So a lot of different strategies that can go in play, but just make sure you understand, especially if you're part of one of those state pensions, that windfall elimination and the government offset are probably going to affect you, or at least look into how they will. And there are calculators on the Social Security website, that you can, log in and plug in what you expect to earn and things like, and it can give calculations knowing that the windfall elimination is going to be in effect and be more accurate than what you just see on your statement.
And that's a great point too, is if you haven't done it already, if you're younger and you're not, going through retirement right now, make sure you log in and get a username, get a password, and get interactive through the website, because there's a lot of tools there, right? And everybody should have, I don't know, you can explain who, you don't receive statements anymore for everybody, or where's the breakoff there?
I believe it's age 60, that above age 60, they still send them out. Below that, they don't, or if they do, it's periodic. It used to be everybody got it every year. But now you can log on and print basically an on-demand statement anytime you want. So yeah, log in, we've basically been talking about retirement benefits, but there are other benefits, disability benefits through Social Security. There are survivor benefits if something were to happen to you. So look it up and kind of see, get a statement just to get a feel for where you stand, so you can start making those projections and thinking about it.
We have just one other question. I know we're kind of ending our time, but I'm gonna grab this question and make sure we put it in here because I think it is important. She said she's divorced. Now that brings up the point of, can you walk through a little bit if somebody is single, either through divorce or death? Maybe just touch on that a little bit, and then we'll use that as a wrap up.
A little bit different there, as far as starting points. So if it's, if you're a survivor, due to a death, you can start as early as age 60. Again, keep in mind, anytime you start before your full retirement age, there are reductions, but you can start a benefit as soon as age 60 if you're a widow or widower. Now, a divorce situation, you want to make sure if you were married 10 years, you could be eligible for benefits off your ex-spouse. But a lot of times, there are stipulations that, hey, don't get remarried before age 60, let's say, so make sure you what if you're 59 and you got married and you gave away a large benefit because, where if you had waited one more year, it would have, you would have been able to get that benefit. So, if you're in one of those situations, make sure, look online, talk to the Social Security office, make sure you don't jeopardize a benefit if you're in one of those situations. But we'll hear from people who, they think, oh my gosh, my ex-spouse is going to get a benefit from me. And they think it's going to reduce their own benefit. And that's not the case. If an ex-spouse is eligible for a benefit off of your record, it does not affect how much you would get yourself. It's just something they're eligible for as part of the system. So, it's not going to penalize you if you were married before as far as Social Security goes. So.
Right.
You get 10 different, if you're old enough, 10 different wives that you were married all 10 years on each of them, and your benefit would still be what your benefit would have been, even though they may all be collecting based off of your record.
10 wives?
Yeah, that's an extreme example.
Well, hey, this is awesome. It's interesting because each of these topics, we could talk for a half hour on each topic and how it is broken out and how it may apply to different people. I know that we're going to continue to include this in multiple discussions as we go forward. If anybody has any additional questions, just reach out, let us know. Otherwise, keep paying attention, look at the topics, and we'll continue to do our best to bring all types of topics and important pieces of information. Thanks everybody for joining today. Nate, thank you so much for your ongoing expertise, and it really is helpful, and I hope it brings it kind of full circle for people to make good decisions in their financial lives. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see everybody tomorrow. We'll have Russ Gollowin, the elder law attorney, and we'll continue the discussions tomorrow. Thank you so much, and have a great day.